let's think about how a tax on a product might affect it if the demand for it is very, very, very elastic. So what I've done here, we're going to think about flags, the market for a certain type of flag that's made in China. And to think about this flag, think about it this way. If the price right now, the equilibrium price between where the supply and the demand intersect, the supply curve and the demand curve intersect, is right at about $70 per flag. So this is a pretty nice flag. It's right at $70 per flag. And the quantity demanded in thousands per year, looks like it's about 25,000 flags are demanded per year. Now, if the price were to go slightly above that equilibrium price, what's going to happen? Well, if the price goes slightly above that equilibrium price, people are going to say, wow, I can go buy the American flags made in Taiwan, or even the ones made in America, or made in Mexico, or made someplace else, at least when it's out on my, people won't be able to tell the difference from a distance. So I'm going to buy one of the substitutes, especially if the ones from Taiwan or Mexico or wherever else are identical to the ones made in China. So if the price were even slightly higher, the quantity demanded would be much, much, much lower. And if the price were even a little bit lower, then people say, oh, I'm not going to buy the Mexican flags or the Taiwanese American flags. I'm going to buy the ones that were made in China. And then the quantity demanded would be much larger. And so what you have here is a very large, a very high elasticity of demand. So this right over here, this is almost perfectly elastic. If it was perfectly elastic, it would be completely horizontal. So this is almost perfectly elastic demand. A very small change in price leads to a huge change in quantity. In particular, a very small percent change in price leads to a huge percent change in quantity. So let's say that some government official decides, you know what, they don't like the idea of American flags being made in China, so they decide to tax American flags made in China. So what they do is that they place a tax. And once again, I'll do a fixed dollar tax. It could be a percentage, and if a percentage, then it'll change the supply plus tax curve. The shift will be a percentage change instead of a fixed change, but the fixed change is a little bit easier to draw, so I'll do that. So let's say that there's a tax. Let me do that in a different color. Let's say that there is a tax placed of $10 per flag. $10. Actually, let's do even a smaller amount. Let's say there's a tax placed of $1 per flag. $1 per flag. I'll make it a little bit larger. Let's say it's $5 per flag. $5 per flag. So now what is the supply plus tax curve? So the supplier, just to make the flags in China and ship them to the United States and get them to the store here, even to get that first flag done, even if it's done in the most efficient way possible, you need at least, looks like around $52, $53. Now they're still going to need that, plus there's going to be a $5 tax on it. So supply plus tax is going to be that plus $5. It's going to be right around there. Over here, you add $5. So at any given point, we're going to add $5 to essentially what the consumer would have to see. So you would have a curve that looks something like this. So this is that dotted line right over there is our supply plus tax. This right over here was just our supply. So you're essentially, so let's think about what happens here. Your equilibrium price was at 70 before. Now our equilibrium price is still pretty much at 70, but our equilibrium quantity has gone down dramatically. Our equilibrium quantity has gone down to, I don't know, it looks like about 18,000 flags per year. So who bore the bulk of this right over here? So let's think about the tax revenue. So the tax revenue in this situation is going to be 18,000 times the $5. So this is the $5 right over here. That is $5. And then times 18,000. So this right over here is the tax revenue. That right over there is the tax revenue. Actually, let me draw it a little bit more carefully. So the tax revenue is, so it's going to be between this line right over here and $5. So just like that. So that's all the tax revenue. And notice, it all came out of the producer surplus. The original producer surplus The original producer surplus was, especially if we assume perfect elasticity, the original producer surplus was this green rectangle plus this and plus this. Now this is going to be, this little area right over here is going to be deadweight loss. Deadweight loss. And all of that came from the producer's surplus. And then all the tax revenue also, especially if you assume this top line was horizontal, also came out of the producer surplus. So in this situation where you had almost, or we could say if you do have perfect elasticity, if you have perfect elasticity of demand for the product, the person who's going to bear the brunt of the tax is going to be the producer. The producer surplus is going to be eaten into from the tax. Bears the, actually I'm not talking about the animal bears. So the producer, the producer gets the burden. The producer gets the burden in that situation. And this is an interesting thing to think about, because when you have almost perfectly elastic demand, so almost, or if you said perfectly elastic demand, a flat demand curve right over here, there's actually no consumer surplus, because the marginal benefit, even the incremental marginal, or I'm being redundant with the words incremental and marginal, but the marginal benefit at any point for the consumer for that next unit is equal to the price they're paying. When you have, especially if the demand curve is perfectly elastic and it's perfectly horizontal, there is no area between the demand curve and the price paid. So there isn't any consumer surplus to eat into. It all gets eaten out of the producer surplus.